So, Michelle, you've been a UKCP psychotherapist for some years. Tell me a little bit about who you work with.
Well, these days I tend to work mostly with people who have an issue with their gender identity, either a conflict with it or seeking to change it. But over the last few years it's evolved further in as much that I mostly now deal with people who are either children or adolescents, sort of up to the age of 18. So that's my main demographic really for the clients that come to me. And when I work with transgender people, interestingly, I find myself just saying it's almost a mantra that I've got now, I think, when I work with them. And I'll say words to the effect, look, I don't have an investment about whether you might transition and change gender fully. I don't have an investment in whether you do that or whether you don't. I have an investment in you feeling emotionally robust and good enough about yourself so that you're going to make healthy judgments and healthy decisions.
And presumably help them make healthier relationships as well.
And when it comes to relationships, part of that would be engaging. You know, if people who have experienced an incongruence in their gender identity will often become quite isolated and withdrawn, and with their parents even it can be strained. So hopefully as a psychotherapist, what I can do and what psychotherapists can do is create a sort of microcosm of the world and help them connect and reconnect so that their relationships outside the therapeutic relationship are improved as well. I think what we offer as therapists is an experience, albeit a small one, of the world, don't we? And they can start to look at it in a different way.
So this is Mental Health Awareness Week. What would you like people to think about during Mental Health Awareness Week in relation to those who are concerned about their gender?
Well, I think paradoxically, I would say that somebody conflicted with their gender is not by definition suffering from a mental health illness. And that's not to stigmatise anybody who has got a mental health illness. But somebody with a conflict with their gender identity is not by definition struggling with a mental health illness. So I would just say, just accept people as individuals. And even if you don't understand what their experience might be or what they're going through, that's fine. They probably wouldn't expect you to understand it. But just accept them for who they are and try and support them in a place that they're in, because that will be different for each person as well.
Because I think that some people can find it quite a frightening condition.
Yeah, and aren't we all frightened of something that we don't understand? But I think an added dimension for this is that our gender identity is our core being, really. It's the one thing that most people go through life never questioning. Might question our sexuality, which of course is different to our gender identity. So for somebody who was born and assigned the gender of female or male, they will just, that's who they are. But for a small percentage of the population, that's not such an easy question to answer. And some will be in a fluid place. If we think of gender identities as a sort of polarity, really, but with alpha male, and then I always use the analogy of Dorothy on the yellow brick road in her gingham dress. Most people fall in between those two extremes, and it's not very clear cut for some people exactly how they will want to present. And one of the things as a therapist we can do is help them to explore that.
So how do you as a psychotherapist help somebody to explore their gender identity?
Well, I think the first thing is to ask them to describe how they feel about it. And if somebody says to me, well, I feel female, well, what does that mean? It's not a trick question. It's just an encouragement to explore it, because what I often find is that people have never considered that their expression of their gender identity might not be the extreme binary that most people feel. In other words,
Binary male or female.
binary male or female, and they might feel in between those two. So where do you fit? You may want to change your body in order that it fits your mind. But I think in the early days, it very much was about somebody trapped in the wrong body, was the expression we always used to hear, didn't we? And I think people are accepting now that maybe expressing your gender identity as more of an option. People can don't necessarily have to comply with a fixed idea of male or female. In other words, somebody living as a woman, just to take an example, might express herself in a very feminine way with makeup and dresses, and another female may wish to have short hair, not wear makeup, and wear a man's suit, for example. Who's to say one is more female than the other? And likewise for a male, can be a presentation that is a typical sort of masculine, macho type of male. It might be somebody who doesn't fit that, and they might have a more feminine expression. But at some point for some people that isn't enough, and there's a line that they want to cross that says, well, actually I'm only going to be happy if I'm over here on one side of this divide. It may not be the one I was assigned, but I think what we're trying to do now, for the first time I think for many years, is to offer people the opportunity to say, well, I don't have to be fixed about this. And what psychotherapy can do, I think, is to embrace that and say, great, if you don't want to be fixed, let's float around with this and see where you feel most comfortable. What's right for you?
Do you think that gender identity can fluctuate?
I think it can at certain times, and for some people it won't, and for other people it might. And that's why an encouragement to explore, I think, is so helpful, because you don't have to feel, just because if it's a young male, for example, in their teens, just because they don't want to go and watch boxing or play football, and they might want to be in a profession that used to be regarded as being a female pursuit, well, it doesn't mean to say you can't do that. Maybe you can explore that. Is that really what's going on, or are you really saying, well, I want to change entirely? And it's not for me as a therapist or anybody to judge somebody and say, I think you should be here. Psychotherapy at its best enables somebody to say, I know for certain now that this is where I am.
So it's for the person themselves really to come up with
absolutely.
those answers.
And we can help them by encouraging to think about the right questions and the right challenges, with that openness that says, I'm not committed here to trying to get you to do one thing or the other, but I just want to make sure that you've had every opportunity to think about it and explore it. And for me, that is the best that I can do, really. You know, immediately we start playing God, thinking we know the right answer, we should quit.